Sarah Matthews, and welcome to the Graduation with Leadership Distinction Alumni Panel hosted by the Center for Integrative and Experiential Learning. I'm an advisor for Graduation with Leadership Distinction in CIEL, and we're so excited to have you all join us. And just a note, the panel is being recorded. So tonight you'll hear directly from alumni who have gone through the GLD process about what it was like, what they learned, what they found the value was in it. As advisors, we get questions like that a lot, and we know that it's just best to go right to the source from those who had lived it. We do have a pretty diverse audience with us tonight, from first years to seniors. And we also may have a faculty or staff member too joining us. So with that being the case, I'm actually going to start with a brief overview of GLD, just the nuts and bolts, to orient you. So GLD is an official academic distinction that you can earn upon graduation that acknowledges both your within and beyond the classroom learning. It recognizes you for getting involved outside of your classes and doing well in your classes. It's recognized on your official transcript and diploma, and you get courseware at graduation. You'll also have an e-portfolio that you can share with the potential employers and grad schools that includes samples of your work and demonstrates written communication, critical thinking, problem solving, and leadership skills, things that prospective grad schools and employers are all looking for. It'll also help you prepare for job interviews. There are 5 different pathways that you can earn GLD in: community service, diversity and social advocacy, global learning, professional and civic engagement, and research. And how do you choose a pathway? Ideally, it's something that really aligns with your interests and passions, things that you're already getting involved in during college to kind of highlight your involvement and accomplishments. And you may already be meeting the requirements for getting involved in activities related to one of these pathways. Once you choose a pathway, there are 6 core requirements. The first is a 3.0 GPA. The second is a substantial core beyond the classroom experience related to the pathway that you choose. And it's worth noting that this is something that you work towards over the course of your time at Carolina. It's not anything that you have to have all figured out your first semester or first semester of junior year or in your senior year. It's something that you work towards over time. Once you meet all the requirements, you have earned GLD. So it's not competitive in the sense that there are a limited number of spaces. That's not the case. Your only competition is yourself, really, if you want to think about it like that. So we've talked about the core experience. Enhancement experiences are another requirement of GLD. And basically, those are just other experiences outside of your classes and outside of your core requirement that contribute to your understanding of topics related to your pathway. Examples include workshops, guest lectures outside of class, club involvement, that kind of thing. The 4th requirement is the coursework requirement. You need to complete 6 credit hours. That's usually 2 courses, depending on your degree level. If you're at an associate's level, then we're just looking for 1 course. Bachelor's level, it's 2 courses. That'll be just about all of y'all. And then at the PharmD level, we're looking for 9 credit hours, a total of 3 classes. Most of the time, the coursework requirement can be filled just by completing your Carolina core or degree requirements. We had a specific question about whether or not courses you take abroad count towards GLD. Generally, they don't. But that being said, GLD advisors can talk you through alternative options to help you think through that. So if you're super passionate about a particular pathway and aren't sure about the coursework requirement and meeting that, talk to advisors. We can definitely talk you through that. The 5th requirement is a public presentation. This is generally completed in your last year and is usually a poster presentation where you present one meaningful beyond the classroom experience and reflect on what you learned from that experience. So that could be semester as a peer leader, a semester abroad, an internship, or a research project. It's really up to you. The final requirement is the e-portfolio. And this is the culminating project to earning GLD. And like the presentation, it's typically done your final year at USC. And it's a website that you'll create where you highlight and articulate your experiences in learning in college through what we call integrative learning. So making connections between within and beyond the classroom.
Rachel, again, I had today.
If you could please mute yourself, that would be helpful. Thank you. All right. So that was just a broad overview of GLD, just to provide some context for today's panel. To learn more, you can visit the GLD website and watch the orientation video. From there, you'll have everything you need to start your GLD experience record or application. You can start entering your experiences, and I would also encourage you to schedule an appointment with the GLD advisor to discuss your plan for GLD, and they'll help you stay on track as well. The QR screen on the or the QR code on the screen will take you straight to the appointment scheduling system. And just a side note, if you are graduating in May of 2025, you can still earn GLD. If you want to do that, though, I would consider scheduling an appointment sooner rather than later to get your plan in place prior to starting the spring semester. So with that, I'll turn it over to our moderators.
Hi, everyone. My name is Addie. I am a sophomore here at USC. I'm the social and digital media intern for CIEL, and I'm a marketing and management major. We are so excited to moderate the panel this evening. I would like to express a huge welcome and thanks to our panelists who are alumni taking time out of their nights to spend with us.
Okay. And we'll go ahead and start with panelists' introductions and then ask several pre-selected questions that were submitted by the audience. We'll use the last 10 to 15 minutes to address questions submitted in the chat. So starting with Jason, if you could just share your name, graduation semester and year, major, campus, GLD pathway, and what you're doing now. After you share, please put that information in the chat so the audience can reach out if they have additional questions.
Thank you. So I graduated this past semester, spring 2024 semester with a bachelor's in public health, and my pathway was professional and civic engagement. And I've been able to use a lot of what that brought me and back to USC to continue a master's of public health and environmental health. So I'm doing that as well as working with the Gills Creek Watershed Association, protecting and conserving and restoring watersheds in the Columbia area.
Okay, Lainey, you can go ahead.
Hi, I'm Lainey. I graduated last spring 24. My undergrad was in international business and accounting, and so my GLD was in global learning. I'm now in my first year of JD candidacy at Vanderbilt Law School. I'm hoping to kind of continue with a global aspect when I go into law practice. So I'm hoping that I'll be able to kind of consider the things that I've reflected on in my GLD in my professional career moving forward as well.
Thanks. And Nathan, you're up.
Hello, I'm Nathan. I graduated in May of 2024 with GLD in research. I'm currently studying chemical engineering for my PhD here at the University of South Carolina. And I want to hopefully work with the GLD to proceed to my future as either a scientist in a national lab or working as a professor.
Thank you all for introducing yourselves. Now we're going to get started. For our first question, why did you decide to pursue GLD and when did you start working on it?
Take that one. I first learned about it. A lot of instructors, professors will have it in their syllabus if the class is eligible for like Sarah was talking, if it's eligible for GLD curriculum, satisfies that requirement, they'll put it pretty big, bolded letters in their syllabus, letting you know that this does qualify you for GLD. So I started thinking about it. And then I got involved with the Sustainable Carolina Leadership Association, and or leadership program, excuse me. And they talked about it a lot in the interviews or the orientation, and realized that a lot of what I was doing with Sustainable Carolina was qualifying me for a GLD pathway. I originally was going to do community service, but realized that like Sarah said, I was already fulfilling the requirements, doing what I was already doing. So without even knowing it, I pretty much qualified for a professional civic engagement. So I saw, I've got the courses, I've got the time, I've got the internship, I've, just got to, apply myself and get it going. So that's when I started, was probably 2 semesters before I graduated. So you do want to start it sooner than later, so you're not in such a crush your last semester, but it's definitely doable.
I think for me, it was always kind of in the back of my mind. I had a lot of internationally framed experience in my undergraduate experience. I came from a multicultural family. I studied international business. I went abroad for a semester, and then I came back and I worked on an international tax team in Manhattan, which was really cool. So I had a lot of just cultural interaction. I also wrote my thesis on ethnocentrism. So just a lot of different moving pieces in my undergraduate career that I kind of wanted to be able to like put together and reflect on in a way that like I could see could benefit me and continue to benefit me after I graduated, knowing that like this was something that I was passionate about. So going into my senior year, I decided to do it. I did it my fall semester of my senior year is when I took the course, and then I did Discover USC, I believe, in the spring. But I really enjoyed it just from the like aspect of being able to reflect on all of these experiences that I'd had in college, because a lot of times I like am doing things and not really like thinking about them super deeply. And it was an opportunity to be able to see like how these things matter, and like how like this cultural interaction is so important regardless of whether I'm in the United States or abroad or working in a certain position. So that's ultimately why I decided to pursue it, so that I could ultimately get that reflection piece.
So for me, I actually didn't know about GLD until my advising appointment in the spring of my junior year. So second semester of junior year, I learned what GLD was. And so I went through and saw what requirements I'd completed. And then I decided to do the University 401 class in my fall of senior year. And so technically, I didn't start really working on the GLD until my senior year, but I had done research since my freshman year, and I'd gone to conferences and presented, and I had a lot of the requirements already completed that I had just done along the way. And so technically, I started working on it my freshman year, whenever I got into research and into those experiences. And GLD allowed me to kind of compile everything together so that I had it in one place and knew what I was going to do or what I was doing, so I could apply it to the future if someone asked me.
Thanks, y'all. So kind of piggybacking off of that, we'd love to learn a little bit more about what experiences during college helped you earn GLD, and how did you find opportunities to get involved?
I think for me, I think like one of the biggest things about GLD is that you're kind of already doing those experiences regardless of whether you're actively seeking out GLD or not. I throughout my undergrad, I was compiling all of these experiences, not really like specifically in pursuit of GLD, but then when I decided to pursue it, I realized that I had all of these experiences that I could talk about and apply to the global learning GLD. So I mean, it's just honestly like involving yourself in things that like you enjoy. And what, like, for me, that was a lot of international stuff, but then it was also like getting involved in like student organizations. All of those things can kind of create different outlets of reflection on your GLD. So I think just at making an intentional decision to get involved in the school and in any outlet is going to be really important, and ultimately will provide you with the opportunities and experiences that you can then apply to completing your GLD.
I would definitely agree. I would definitely agree with that. The GLD is supposed to be you combining all of your experiences that you have had. That's not saying that you can't go out and find those experiences now. As if you're a senior, for example, you can still find those experiences and still go in and try to reach those requirements. But it is set up in a way that you are already going through these experiences throughout your undergrad experience. And all you need to do is just put it together and compile it. And it's very well set up in that regard.
Yeah, so I considered three different pathways: the global learning or the community service. Ended up not going either of those ways because those required a little bit beyond what I had been able to spend abroad and how much I had time to do community service. But there's a pathway for everybody. So yeah, any organization you get involved with, you probably volunteer for or with, and that'll get you a good bit of the way. And then you can just get with an advisor and figure out what gaps are to be filled, and then fill them, and then you get yourself going.
Thanks, y'all.
Alrighty, our next question is, the requirements for GLD can seem very daunting at times. How time consuming is the process actually, and how did you manage your time meeting these requirements on top of all your other obligations?
So for me personally, the biggest time consuming part was the e-portfolio. And that might have been just because I had already been actively doing a lot of the other requirements. But for the portfolio, you have to actually sit down and think about how you can compile everything you've done into one big website or article. And so that was kind of the most time consuming. So I would set aside like 2 hours on the weekend to go through and think about what I needed to do and put that onto into words. So just setting out 2 hours, an hour each week will allow you to compile everything that you needed.
I think I found it to be very manageable. But I also think like what helped me was taking the University 401 class, because I think if I'd been doing it through the advising strategy or just simply on my own, it's harder to pace yourself, and it's not something that I would have wanted to have done like with like 3 weeks prior to the deadline. It was something that I definitely needed to like take time to think about. So like working it into my coursework was very helpful. And then also that course breaks it down to where you're focusing on different sections of the e-portfolio. And then ultimately like building your way up to that final e-portfolio, which is really nice because it doesn't feel like you're doing it all at one time. So I think spacing it out that way throughout the semester is really beneficial, to where I didn't find that it was impeding on my ability to complete other academic obligations or anything. So I would definitely recommend that class as far as time commitment goes, just because otherwise it's harder to prioritize getting those things done.
I'm a big believer in U401 as well. Had a really great advisor. She put me in contact with the writing lab, the writing center, write night. They'll have specific nights that the writing lab sets the time to help you work on your key insights. And yeah, like Nathan was saying, just budget your time well, an hour here, an hour there. You want to be working at it consistently, um, because you are trying to synthesize basically a full 4 years of coursework into meaningful insights that you can apply and show people that you can really learn something and know how to exercise it in practical situations.
Fantastic. So this is a beautiful segue into the next question. Is just expanding on your experience with developing the e-portfolio, writing those key insights, which for everybody, key insights are essays where you connect a specific course with a specific beyond the classroom experience, and arrive to a key lesson. So what was your experience during that process, and how did you know you were making the right connections in your key insights?
I think for me, I knew my insights, I feel like they came kind of naturally because these are things that they'd always somewhat been in the back of my mind based on the experiences that I'd had in college, up to that point. And so like writing your key insights is just like a way to like reflect on things that like you maybe have thought of before, but just haven't like really thought of that deeply. So I think like when you start to write your key insights, you start to see the connections between your experiences and your classes. Um, I know, for example, like one of my key insights was about work-life balance. And so then I had these experiences abroad where I was able to see an entirely different like outlook on work-life balance than what we see more so in the United States. And then I was able to cite like class discussion. So I think like you start when you know what your key insights, I'm trying to figure out how to phrase it, but when you have your key insights and these are things that you've thought about before, and these are things that you've had experiences that have made you think about them. So when it comes to the point where you're connecting your beyond the classroom and you're within the classroom, you'll know what those are just simply because like these aren't going to be like new crazy ideas to you because they come from your own personal experiences.
For me, when it came to writing the e-portfolio, I actually kind of struggled a lot because throughout all of my coursework, we haven't really written personalized writings. It's very technical. So figuring out how to change up my whole writing style and figure out, okay, how do I tie this key insight into what I did in the classroom and how they interacted and how they both grew off of each other and made me a better in that subject. So for one of my key insights, it was communication. And from my experience, communicating in the research group was being able to talk to people who knew more than me and then be able to ask questions and understanding that that was super similar to what I did in classes. Whenever I had a question about material in class, I could go to the professor, and then also into presenting. I tied all of those into my key insights. So it's really taking something that you learned in the class and something you learned outside of the class and how they mesh together and furthered you in your education.
Yeah, for me developing my key insight, yeah, it was tough getting started at first because, like I said, you're reflecting on almost 4 years coursework, and you don't know exactly what jumps out to you at first. Maybe you do, but it might be kind of a lot to think of just off the bat. So there's like flow charts, concept mapping, that sort of thing, writing exercises that you'll go through if you do take the U401 or even structured advisement. I'm sure they'll uh, help you out with that. And it really does help you to kind of parse through what what it is that you learned and how it does apply, and how you can write it in a way that people can see that and know that you benefit from it.
Okay, awesome. Next question. What did you find the rewarding parts of pursuing GLD to be, and how would you describe the benefit of doing GLD or writing an e-portfolio, and what skills did this help you develop?
Like I said, I was working with the Gills Creek Watershed Association. They're actually where I got a lot of my inspiration for my key insight, and I'm working with them currently. So the fact of ecosystem services, just what they have to offer us in terms of recreational opportunities, provisioning water, supporting food, all that sort of thing. That's a skill that I was able to really develop through GLD. So I was able to find a critical way to think about that and combine it with concepts from other courses in a way that made it stick that much more. And it's like in the name, Center for Integrated and Experiential Learning. So you integrate what your experiences are to form deeper connections with what you learned.
I think I, especially as I was doing the GLD, I was also applying for law school. And once the spring hit and I had finished my e-portfolio and everything, I was doing, law school interviews. And I think what I realized is that these were experiences that I talked about a lot in my law school interviews. And what I realized as I continued to talk about them and realized as I completed the e-portfolio is that I was becoming a lot more introspective as to how these experiences had really resonated with me, and how important they are to me, and why, and how I plan to continue for example, me being in global learning, how I plan to implement these passions in my legal career as I continue moving forward. So I was able to consider all of those things and just get a very holistic view on my experiences so far, which I think is really important. And then on the flip side, completing an e-portfolio is actually very helpful professionally. I am a business undergrad, so I didn't do much writing in general. And so honestly, going through this in my senior year was very important, I feel like, because especially in law school, we're doing a ton of writing, we're doing a ton of professional networking, and these are skills that come in so handy. The e-portfolio is something that I still put in my resume and on things to show employers. So I think not only is the process of reflection really beneficial, but also the actual process of creating the e-portfolio is really beneficial for developing your professional skills.
So for me, what I think I found the most rewarding would be seeing all of the stuff that I had compiled together and seeing how much I actually had done throughout my undergrad, because over the course of the 4 years, it flies by super quick, and you don't really recognize how much you've done and how much you've grown and how much you've developed. And so when I actually started putting that down on paper, well, not paper, but on a Word document, I was able to see, wow, I really did a lot. I developed a lot as a person, as a student, as a member of society. So I think that was what I found most rewarding, was seeing how much, just outside of the research that I had done, how much of a person I've grown to be. So I think that was the most rewarding. And then writing the e-portfolio and doing the GLD gave me a lot of skills that I didn't get throughout my undergrad. So presenting, writing reflections on myself, that's stuff that I never really had done. So it allowed me to develop even more and really get it on a document so that I could share that with others. If I'm in an interview, I can talk about that, and that'll help me smooth the interview process or smooth the conversation.
And then a follow-up question, how has GLD impacted your career goals and hiring opportunities and your career in general? And how have you talked about GLD in interviews or on LinkedIn or on your resume?
Keep on coming back to it, but the Gills Creek watershed, they brought me in sort of assistant program coordinator for a assessment of Devil's Ditch. It's this area stream sort of by Owens Airport, Owens Field, and the airport that's nearby there. The airport name escapes me, but it's downstream from sort of a higher income area that they were prone to flooding, and they built some stormwater irrigation improvements, but it was an improvement for people in the area. But what it did was funnel water into the stream that could now potentially impact lower income communities down the stream. So we're evaluating what those impacts will be, and that's basically what one of my biggest my favorite insights from GLD was providing human services to ecosystem services, kind of interdisciplinary between social and environmental science, how they play a part coming together, and evaluating impacts that might otherwise go unnoticed because underrepresented areas don't get to make their voices heard as often as we'd like.
I think professionally, completing the GLD in global learning and completing my e-portfolio, I've been able to communicate in professional settings that I've had a lot of multicultural experiences. And because of that, I can interact with a very diverse group of people, and I know how to effectively adapt my communication to different groups of people based on their backgrounds, their cultures. And that was a huge point of my reflection in my GLD and a huge part of just my college experience in general. And so being able to talk about that, but then also produce the e-portfolio for me, it was law schools, but I mean, I do plan to show future employers that as well. There's a lot of times there's links where you can just copy and paste different things that you may have participated in. So for me, I'll be putting that e-portfolio out there because it shows that I've done a lot of reflection on things that actually translate very well into a professional world. And I think that's really important. And then even on like your LinkedIn, I think you mentioned LinkedIn is a place where a ton of employers these days go to kind of get a glimpse of who you are and what you're involved in and what you're passionate about. And there's a section on your LinkedIn profile where you can spotlight different things. So you can just insert the link into your LinkedIn profile, and people can then see like the work that you've done in your undergrad and how involved you've been and how your experiences matter to you. So I think all of these things, all of these moving parts of the GLD are things that will benefit you in the professional world.
So I've kind of got an opposite for everyone. I haven't actually been going through any job searching or anything along those lines where I would show my e-portfolio. However, what it's done is it's given me a template that I have in my mind per se. So if I'm at a conference and someone asks me, "Oh, what have you? How have you grown as a person? How have you developed? How have you used your social skills and all of that?" I'm able to pull back my knowledge of what I had written down and what my experiences were, both in the classroom and in research. And I can use that as kind of a baseline for how I can guide that conversation and what I've done, and it helps me share my experiences and my development to potential employers or potential coworkers in the future.
Thank you all for sharing. So we kind of talked about the positives and the benefits, but we also know there are some challenges. So what did you find the most difficult about GLD, and how did you overcome those challenges?
So for me, I really did not like the writing aspect because I could have it in my head what I wanted to say, but I'm a very technical person by the research pathway. That's part of it. But I had a really difficult time putting my words onto a page. And so I met with my the person who's teaching my 401 class. And so I met with him and I was like, I have this idea. I have a really, really bad sketch of it in on my document. Can we go through it and can we clean it up so that it sounds professional and it sounds right? And so that was one of the biggest things that helped me get through that process, was asking the questions and asking for help.
For me, and I think a few in our class, there was kind of the idea that you had to write about what your pathway is relational, like something that related to your pathway. So if your pathway was community service, people felt limited to only writing about community service, or if they were global learning, they're worried that they could only write about global learning, so on and so forth. But you're not hamstrung by what your pathway is. Those are just like the preliminary criteria, and then you're free to write about what you like and mostly how you like it, as long as you can, show that you've, um, found a way to apply something in class in a real world in a way that is practical and applicable and demonstrates leadership. That's another challenge, is the leadership section. Um, you create sort of like a hypothetical, like based off of one of your insights, how you're going to apply that into the real world. And since it's very hypothetical and abstract, and you're not in any way like confined to having to do that either. That's another thing that was kind of a challenge, but definitely a good thing to work through.
I would echo that. I think the leadership section is probably what I found to be the most challenging, because through my key insights, like I was able to reflect on my own experiences and how I felt like they'd impacted me. But then when you get to the leadership section, you're kind of thinking beyond the scope of just yourself and how you've been impacted and how like you can move forward. And now you're thinking about like, why are these experiences things that I should be sharing with other people, and like what are things that I can implement that will bring more awareness to more people, to be able to see how important these experiences are and why it's important to know these things. And so I think for me that was really challenging, because I knew going forward how I've been impacted, but why was it important for other people to hear what I had to say? And so creating kind of that like strategy for educating other people on whatever your topic is, it can require more critical thinking than your reflections do in your key insights.
Another thing that I wanted to mention was when you're in the 401 class, the person who is grading your portfolio is the mentor and the faculty advisor for the class. So if you work with them, they know what you've done, you know what they expect. And so it makes it a lot easier to write and put together your GLD portfolio.
Thank you guys. And then what advice do you have for students as they pursue GLD, or what do you wish you had known or been told going into it?
say, the sooner you can get started on it, the better. We do say that, you're probably likely already working towards it without even knowing it. But if you can just familiarize yourself with what the requirements are, so you can kind of concentrate those efforts, so you're not rushing to do it all in one semester or anything like that. Proactivity is key. If you're somebody who, wants something to give you structure and keep you on a timeline, then U401 is a great way to go. If you find you don't really like somebody telling you when to do what, then maybe just structured advisement or independent study would be good. But just just book an appointment with a GLD advisor, and they can help you hammer all that out.
What I would say, probably the best advice is you do need to focus on getting it done while you're working on the portfolio. But you need to also remember that you have other classes which might take more work. So you have to really work on that time management of, okay, I can work on portfolio now. The next week, I'm going to have 3 exams. I have to put a little bit more time into it this week because I won't be able to do it next week. So just figuring out when your classes are, and your classes are very important, and the portfolio is still important, but it should not be the most important thing as compared to your classes. And just having that management of, okay, I need to do this, but this takes priority right now. Let's focus on the exams, and then we can get back to writing.
I would definitely advocate for taking U401. I was kind of on the fence about it when I was originally starting to consider completing a GLD, just because I didn't know if I wanted to add an extra class onto my class schedule. I was taking a lot of credit hours in my senior year, so I was just unsure, but I'm really glad I did, because I know that if I had tried to do it simply with an advisor or doing it on my own, that it would have been much more challenging for me to prioritize it along with my other academic responsibilities. And I think that class is so well paced that it didn't overwhelm me to be doing that at the same time as doing my other classes. So I would definitely recommend taking that. And it's also just nice because as you complete different parts of it, you're getting feedback all along the way. So you're not turning something in and then getting feedback and then having to apply it all at once. You're getting it along the way where you can make changes and actually learn from that feedback as you continue to write. So I think it's very helpful.
All right. Thank you all for sharing about your GLD experience so freely. At this time, we will take any questions in the chat that any of our attendees have. And while you guys pop those questions into the chat, we will go through a couple smaller questions. So we've heard that a presentation is a requirement of GLD. What was the presentation like for you, and how did you prepare for it?
So I know a lot of people do the Discover USC presentation, but as I was working the research group, I actually presented multiple times at conferences. So it was kind of a different direction for me when it came to the presentations. I would prepare by studying my notes, studying my presentation, and instead of making a poster, making a PowerPoint, and practice presenting to my group members in my research group. So that's how I really prepared the presentations. And the best thing to know is that you're the expert on what you're presenting and what you're sharing. You're teaching others. They're not judging what you're doing.
I think so. I did the presentation requirement through Discover USC, and I really liked doing that, honestly, because I know, like, with GLD, the presentation requirement can really be any presentation. So it doesn't even necessarily have to be about your GLD, as long as you are completing it based on, I can't remember exactly what the guidelines are, but I did think it was really cool to be able to present on my GLD and at Discover USC. It was honestly a really cool experience, just because it was very, like, casual in a lot of ways, where people are just walking around and they're asking you questions about it, and it's ultimately an opportunity for you to get to talk about all of the work that you'd put in to complete the GLD, and it's being able to share your reflections with other people, and it feels good once you've completed that. And now you get to tell people, like, why it matters to you so much, because a lot of times when you're doing the GLD, these are things that you're really passionate about. So you're able to share your passions with other people, and they ask you questions, they're engaged. So it was a really good experience.
Yeah, I had a lot of fun at Discover USC. It's, a great way to see other people at the same time as you present their findings. Whether it's like really technical research, like Nathan might have had a presentation on, or you might have had something more interdisciplinary, then you can also expand on that. So it was a great platform, but like Reagan said, you don't necessarily have to do Discover USC. There's a lot of different options.
Great. Thanks, y'all. And I see we have a question in the chat from Simon. Was there a defined order to how you fulfill the GLD requirements, or was the order more fit to your preference or schedule?
So I would say it's more fit to your preference and schedule. So you can, except for the portfolio, which typically comes towards the end and is the last step, everything else you kind of complete as you see fit. So if you need this thing for this course and you happen to be taking it next semester, you can do that. If you have the presentation and you just happen to be presenting somewhere, you can use that as your GLD presentation. So it all kind of can go in whatever direction you want and whatever you're most comfortable with.
Yeah, I would agree with that. I think, like, I really didn't look all that closely at the requirements until I was going into my senior year, and a lot of those things were just things that I checked off through my college experiences. So being aware of what they are, and then just, like, taking the opportunity as they come to complete them is kind of what works best for me. The e-portfolio is something that I really honed in on with the class in my senior year. But those experiences, you're presented with so many of them at the University of South Carolina throughout your whole college career. So being able to have the flexibility to take those experiences as they come is what helps me be able to complete it.
So with the application requirements, there's the course requirements, the hour requirements, discovery requirements. There's not really any defined order. People came to U401 having, 3 different applications because they're just filling in whatever was relevant to whatever that pathway was. You do eventually have to hone in on just one. You can't, I suppose there's nothing to say you can't have a GLT in 2 different pathways, but it would just be a lot. So yeah, just knock out those requirements as you come across them, and then once you get to either structured advisement or U401, there's a rough schedule for when you're going to have your first insight, rough draft, the final draft of your first insight, and then second and third. And then your leadership section, depending on your instructor. Mine was pretty flexible. So if you just, leveled with them, say, hey, look, GLD is important to me, but I also have, core class requirements I have to satisfy. They'll likely flex with you a little bit on, when you need to have those insight drafts due by. So for me, it was pretty flexible. It might vary by instructor, but definitely no rigid, defined way you have to do it.
How did you meet the coursework requirement, and did the courses easily fit with your Carolina core and your degree?
I just was going through my public health curriculum, and so like the health promotion, education, behavior program planning course was eligible for it. So I just added that to my application as I was going through it. And then everything else just kind of fell into place.
For me, with the coursework, one of the courses was my senior design class. That was applicable towards the GLD courses. And then the other one that I did was independent research, which I'd already taken that class my sophomore, junior year. So those fit into my schedule pretty nicely as just classes along the way that I took.
For me, they fit together very nicely. I was pursuing global learning, and then with international business, a lot of the classes that I was taking were able to satisfy the course requirements. So I think also when you're looking at which pathway you want to pursue, to look at those things and see if what you're studying does have that overlap. I think that was really helpful for me because I didn't feel like I was adding on any additional coursework to be able to complete the GLD.
Thanks, y'all. I love how when you're sharing your experiences, you're touching base on a lot of the things that we hear from other students experiencing GLD. And I see some other questions are being worked on in the chat. So y'all in the audience, please feel free. We still got several minutes left, but while you're finishing up your questions, we have another question that we can ask, and this is kind of a fun one. What has been the most meaningful connection you made in a key insight, if you can remember?
I liked, I already talked a lot about the ecosystem services, so I'll go into a different one. But so there's May semester I took in Costa Rica where we look at their public health programs. They have what's called EBICE, which are like sort of urgent care clinics that are spread throughout all of Costa Rica, pretty much just primary care, just bandages, and maybe you have a sore throat, that sort of thing, and how that's sort of a government program there, and that's all funded by the government because their government doesn't have to fund the military. They are protected by I believe it's the Geneva Convention that if anybody were to attack them, everybody would you know step up for them. I think I might have that convention wrong. They might be NATO, but besides the point, that was just a really cool thing to see that when you have that sort of levity to spend money on things that benefit the population more than destroy it, then you can do really good things for your people. They've also got renewable, like almost 100% renewable electricity. There's a difference between like their electricity generation and their overall power generation. They still drive a lot of cars. They still burn a lot of fossil fuels and that sort of thing. But overall, their electricity production is almost 100% renewable. So they do that with less than a third of the GDP that we have. So that was sort of my insight, was that, you know, it's not really a matter of that we can't do it, it's that we don't want to do it. So that was an insight that I really was happy to come across as well.
I had a key insight that was focused on ethnocentrism, which is basically where cultures have perceptions of other cultures based on through the lens of their own cultural values and beliefs. And so I thought that was very interesting, and that's actually what I ended up writing my thesis on last year as well, because it has a lot to do with how we interact with one another. Our understanding of, we typically apply our own cultural beliefs when we interact with people that come from different cultural backgrounds, and in a professional setting, that's like very important, because when, for example, you're doing business in different countries, there's different norms and different practices that you have to learn to adapt to. And so ethnocentrism is kind of a product of not being educated on the practices of other cultures. So that was something that I really looked into. And I remember I was talking about different experiences that I had when I went abroad. And one of those things was where I saw myself kind of being ethnocentric, is I lived in Cergy, France, which is a suburb outside of Paris. And so in my mind, because it's so close in proximity to Paris, that everyone would be able to speak English. So I get there on the first day and go to a bakery and order something, and they had no idea what I was saying, and I had to learn to adapt, because I was in a place where people didn't know how to speak English because they were in a small suburb of Paris and they only spoke French. And so that was a time where I had to kind of introspectively think about how I was applying my own cultural beliefs to these people who are living in a whole different culture, and learn how to adapt my own language skills, behavior, to accommodate for those cultural differences. And I think that's really important in any professional setting now, just because international aspects are so prominent no matter what field you go into, because the world is just becoming more interconnected with technology. So that was something really interesting to reflect on.
So one of my biggest, or well, the one that I remember the best was my communicating between different aspects of life. And so what I remember connecting it to was my presentations that I gave in class. So one of our classes, we would collect data in our lab class, and then we would present it to the professors a week later. So I connected my experiences presenting in conferences, presenting in research group meetings, and presenting in that class and other classes where we had group projects. And so I showed where I took my knowledge from my classes, how I applied that into the research meetings and presentations at conferences, and then how I did the opposite direction and applied those experiences outside of the classrooms into my class experiences, and how they worked together and made my presentation skills better and better, and how to act, and how I learned to accurately show data and show experiences and show anything that I did through a PowerPoint, and how I could speak on it without looking onto the presentation, and how I could really share my knowledge with other people who may have the same knowledge, may have less knowledge, or may even have more knowledge. So how to confidently and effectively communicate with everyone.
Awesome. Well, that is all the time we have today. Thank you all so much for your participation, and thank you to our panelists for sharing their experiences with us. At this time, we would like our student audience members to please take a couple of minutes to complete the 4-question survey via the QR code on the screen or the link in the chat. After you complete the survey, you are free to go, and can our panelists please stay for a moment after?